Hi everybody, Professor Christina here, and today we're going to talk about the marketing campaign metrics that you can use to understand the performance of any digital marketing campaign. So let's begin. So these are really the big six campaign metrics that most marketers typically measure. Some of them are incredibly useful, some of them not so much, but you're going to see pretty much all of these campaign metrics on most dashboards measuring the performance of campaigns across multiple channels, whether it's email, social media, SEO, and beyond. Number one is click-through rate. That measures how attractive your messages are at first glance. Number two is conversions. Those measure how well your campaign drove responses. Then there's return on ad spend, or ROAS. That's a measure of how profitable your campaign was. Number four is reach. That looks at how many people saw your campaign. Five is frequency, a little bit less useful metric. That looks at how often people saw your campaign. And finally, we have possibly one of the less effective metrics, which is impressions, and that looks at simply how many times your message was shown. And how do we look at each one of these metrics to understand our campaign success? Well, let's start with the big one that we all measure, which is your click-through rate. This is a measure often of ad attractiveness or campaign collateral attractiveness. Now, that attractiveness could be the artwork, it could be the text in an ad or a social media post, it could be the offer, for instance, whether you're offering buy one, get one free, or free shipping, or 20% off. It can also simply be an effect of the time of day or the audience that you're targeting. But whatever that magic is, and it could be a combination of all of these, your click-through rate measures how attractive that ad or other piece of marketing collateral that you put out there online is to your target audience. Now, how do you use click-through rate to understand the power of your campaigns? It's a comparative metric, and that's the number one thing you want to remember. You really want, whenever you're measuring click-through rate, to compare the CTRs, the click-through rates that you're seeing on your current campaign, with campaigns that had some other different key element, different design, different copy, a different offer. You published them at a different time of the year, or in your sales cycle, or a different time of day, or different hour of the day even. You could look at different audiences or how much you spent on each individual campaign. You want to look at whether your click-through rate is increasing with this campaign versus previous campaigns that were somehow different, or decreasing. You also want to compare it to industry benchmarks. Oftentimes we'll see people say, well, this ad campaign only had an 8% click-through rate, and we'll say that's a really good click-through rate. So before you start measuring your click-through rate, ask yourself two questions. How does this CTR compare to industry benchmarks, and how does it compare with how well other campaigns that we've done in the past did? Because that's the real measure of whether your CTR is measuring a really effective campaign or one that needs a little bit of improvement. Now let's look at conversions. Conversions are a measure usually of the effectiveness of your campaign at generating a response. Whether that response was a purchase or just an email sign-up or a donation from a nonprofit, your conversion rate is a combination of your message's attractiveness, the message that got people to click in the first place, and the effectiveness of your landing page. Both of those need to be effective for you to have a high conversion rate. If your ads are effective, but they drive traffic that is from an irrelevant audience, people who are not really ultimately going to buy, then your landing page cannot do anything to convert them because ultimately they wouldn't be interested in your product to begin with. For instance, let's say you are a steak of the month club or cold cuts of the month club, and you accidentally end up targeting vegetarians. Your ad may not make it clear what your product is if it's a poorly designed ad, and people may think it's a regular food subscription box or a recipe subscription box. They'll click through, and then on your landing page, they find out that the product is not good, not something that they want. On the other hand, your ad could be targeting the right people, but once they go to the landing page, your landing page could have a confusing design, a poor call to action, no call to action, or the copy or the imagery could be unattractive, or your offer may not be a particularly good offer. Maybe you're offering 10% off and your competition is offering 20% off, and there's no really compelling reason to shop with you for that higher price. So both your ad has to be very attractive to the right target audience, and when that target audience clicks on your ad and gets to your landing page, the landing page also has to be highly effective. That's what your conversion rate is truly measuring. So how do we apply those conversion rate metrics in optimizing our campaigns? Remember, conversion rate is a results metric. If your message generates high click-through rates, but they don't convert, look to your landing page. Look at the audience that you're targeting. Look at your offer. What is not convincing your customers to convert? What's keeping that conversion rate low? Look at that and you'll find a direction in which to optimize your campaigns. Now, you might find that you're not sure whether it was your landing page's offer, call to action, what was it that was leading to those low conversion rates, and that's where testing, A/B, and multivariate come into play. But look at all of those elements, and if you're not sure which of these is hurting your conversion rates, test, test, and test again. Then you have your return on ad spend. Your return on ad spend could be high or low because you have an ad platform that provides value. In other words, you're not paying very much per result. Or even if you're paying a lot per result, you're getting very high value customers. So your return on ad spend definitely ties into how effective your landing pages are and at generating conversions, because if you're spending money on ads and you're not getting any conversions, your return on ad spend is going to be very poor. But if your conversion rate is really high, you still need to measure your return on ad spend, because you could also still be paying too much for your ads. The return on how much you're spending versus how much sales and revenue you're generating from those ads is still important. Think of it this way. If you have a high conversion rate, but you're selling your cheapest product, one on which your margins are very low, or in fact, it is your loss leader. It's something where you're taking a loss on it in the hopes that you make it up with sales for your more expensive products, then you can have a very high click-through rate, a very high conversion rate. In other words, you're generating a lot of traffic to your landing pages from those ads, a high click-through rate. You're generating a lot of sales from those ads, in other words, a high conversion rate, but you're not making a lot of money on those sales that your ads are generating. So your return on ad spend could still be very low. So how do you use that return on ad spend metric? Now, if you have a high return on ad spend, congratulations, but still, even if your results are good, you want to look at why are they good so you can replicate those great results. Having great success but not being able to replicate it still doesn't lead to marketing-driven growth. So look at why you have a high return on ad spend. Was it the ad platform you selected? In other words, are you getting greater value out of your Facebook or your Instagram ads than your LinkedIn ads? Are you paying a relatively low amount per click but getting a lot of conversions, a lot of click-throughs, then conversions, and then high-value sales? Is it your bid strategy? Did you set your bid strategy right by going for bidding for conversions or bidding for views or results, which often cost less but can still lead to high conversions? Was your creative development efficient? In other words, did you not spend a lot of money developing the ads because you were efficient in your process? You still got high quality design, you still got high quality copy, but you didn't, for instance, go through a ton of revisions that eat up your staff's time, your consultants' time, and don't necessarily lead to a efficient advertising process. All of these could lead to high return on ad spend. So look at all of these factors. Were you targeting the right audience? Did you bid really efficiently? Are you on the right ad platform, or are you creating your ad creative in a particularly efficient way? Now, if you have low return on ad spend, don't despair. Maybe the platform you're advertising on is very expensive. Maybe you need to shift, for instance, from LinkedIn, and no criticism of LinkedIn, to a lower cost platform like, for instance, Google Ads or Facebook. Maybe the platform is not the problem, but it has poor data for your particular audience. It's not terribly good at targeting them. Every platform has different types of data that they collect, and they may have more robust data on one audience than another. For instance, LinkedIn is going to have better job title data than a lot of other social media platforms. So if you're targeting people by job title, you'll probably get a higher return on ad spend on LinkedIn because they have the best data that's really going to help you home in on those job titles that you want to target. Or maybe you are not targeting your consumers where they want to see your message. A lot of times, for instance, people might use TikTok recreationally, and if you're targeting people on TikTok with an ad, a recruitment ad, for instance, for a job, they might ignore it because they're just not in the right mind space to receive your message. Put that same ad on LinkedIn and you'll generate excellent results. So those are some of the factors you want to look at when you have low return on ad spend. Next, let's look at some of the less effective marketing metrics, but ones that marketers often track nonetheless. Reach is simply a measure of your message distribution. It's how many people, again, saw your message. It could be that you're spending your ad dollars very efficiently so that you're reaching a large number of people for very little ad spend. You might be targeting people who are exactly in your right target audience, and so they're responding to the ad, and that causes the algorithmic ad targeting to reach more people because people are really responding to your ad. Could be virality. Your ad might be so intriguing or fun or interesting that people are actually organically sharing it. They're sharing it out to their friends. So why not get excited about reach? Well, it's simply because reach is just an awareness metric. Awareness is great, but high reach could indicate virality. In other words, people are sharing your ad content, or broad awareness. Your ad is not getting shared, but your paid placements are getting in front of a lot of people, but it can also indicate that the target audience saw a message far too few times. You've reached a lot of people, but each one of them maybe only saw the ad once, so they don't remember the ad. So reach simply says a lot of people saw your ad. It doesn't tell you whether they saw it enough times to be aware of your message and consider your product. In fact, if you have very high reach but low frequency, people only saw your ad once or twice, and then they may not be enough to generate awareness. It's not necessarily a sign that your ad campaign is successful. It could be a leading indicator that your ad campaign will be successful, but you need to consider it in the context of other metrics like click-through rate and most especially conversions and return on ad spend. Now, reach is a little bit more useful if you track it alongside frequency. Frequency starts to measure in precise way your message's impact. You could get high frequency with efficient ad spending. You could be getting it, though, with excess spending. People are seeing your ad too many times and you're spending too much money to have people see your ad 20 or 30 times and they're getting bored with it. Frequency can also be a sign that you're not rotating your creative often enough, or that you're rotating it at the exact right rate. Now, why is frequency such a vague metric? Because it only tells you how many times people saw your ad. There is no perfect ad frequency. What you really want to look for, if you want to determine what the right frequency is for your organization, is start to look for diminishing returns. Do you start to get lower click-through rates after people have seen an ad 8 times, 9 times, 11 times? It's an impact metric is what's important to remember. Frequency must be measured in the context of conversions and return on ad spend, and that will tell you what the right frequency is for you. If you're still getting high conversions and you're getting a good return on ad spend, then whatever frequency you have at a good return on ad spend and high conversion rate is right for you. If, on the other hand, a frequency of 7 generates the exact same number of conversions and the exact same return on ad spend as a frequency of 11, you know that having people see your ad 11 times gets no greater result than having them see it 7 times. So they're probably tuning out after they've seen it for the 7th time. Now, there's one more metric that can tell you whether a frequency for a particular ad is good or bad, and that's brand awareness studies. Are people more aware of your brand? Can they recall your brand if asked to name a brand, for instance, of food subscription box, going back to our Cold Cut of the Month Club subscription box? if they see your ad 11 times. If people have higher brand awareness with higher frequencies, then you might decide that even though the return on ad spend as a direct metric of how effective your ads are at generating results may not be that high at that higher rate, the higher awareness is worth it to you as a brand. However, most organizations really set their frequency at a frequency that gives them a high return on ad spend without starting to get into diminishing returns where you're not getting a particularly good incremental increase in that return on ad spend for how much more you're spending to have people see your ad more frequently. Typically, that will get to be around a 7 or an 8 for most organizations. Generally, once you're in the double digits, in other words, people have seen your ad 10 times or more, people are probably starting to tune out and you may want to look at your frequency. But again, results vary across different industries, for different audiences, even for different brands. So this is something that you need to look at in the context of your brand awareness as well as your conversions and your return on ad spend. Now, impressions is a metric I don't really encourage people to spend a lot of time looking at. It's simply a metric of how visible your ad was. It could be a sign of high ad spend, efficient ad spend, or frankly of bot traffic. It's simply how many times your ad was, quote, seen on screen. However, it's often still difficult to distinguish real human traffic from bots. And so impressions are often inflated by non-human traffic. A lot of ad impressions, as a result, are often not seen by any human eyes. It only tells you that the ad creative was served by the ad server. A bot could have been triggering that serving up of your ad, or even if a human being was scrolling and they had your ad flash on their screen, it doesn't tell you whether they understood the ad, responded to it, or even remember or recognize it. Certainly, if it's increasing your brand awareness, every time you increase your impressions, that's a sign that humans are seeing your ads and it's working for you, but never measure the success of an ad campaign or any campaign on the strength of impressions, because it doesn't tell you whether humans saw that ad and remembered it. And frankly, it doesn't even tell you whether humans saw the ad at all. So here's a quick look at the different metrics in their order of relevance. The most relevant is return on ad spend. That tells you whether your ad spending is actually generating some kind of revenue. Then comes your conversion rate, or CR. That's telling you whether you're getting results together with your return on ad spend. People are converting from those ads. They're buying from you or signing up for your email newsletter or following you on social media, however you define a conversion. That's what's happening. So conversion rate and return on ad spend together measure your results. Your click-through rate is a leading indicator that you're going to start getting conversions, hopefully, if your landing page is effective and you're targeting the right audience who is at a stage where they're ready to buy. It's the good indicator that you're at least getting some kind of response to your ad, but it's not really a result in and of itself. So it's less important than return on ad spend or conversion rate. Frequency can show potential impact. People are seeing your ad. It tells you how often your ad is being seen. And together with reach and impressions, it's a less useful metric, but it does tell you that people are getting exposed to your message, and that together with other metrics could start to give you some indicator that your ads are successful in reaching your audience. So how do you use your campaign metrics? Well, number one, you want to use them in context. Look at what your goals are for a campaign. Is it awareness? Then reach might be a very legitimate metric for you. But if it's to make sales, you want to look at return on ad spend or click-through rate and compare it to your baselines. Be realistic and look at your industry benchmarks. Is a click-through rate of 1% excellent? Is a click-through rate of 5% outstanding? And what is your baseline for your organization? What are the results you typically get? Are you doing better than those results? Then your ad campaign could be a qualified success. And finally, here's a quick infographic on how to measure whether your campaign is working or not. To see whether it's being seen, look at your impressions and your reach. If it's getting attention, look at your frequency. Is it getting a response? Look at your click-through rate, return on ad spend, profitable, return on ad spend, and is it interesting? Is it generating a click-through rate? This cheat sheet will also be posted alongside this video. I hope you enjoyed this quick tour of the Big Six marketing campaign metrics. This is Professor Christina wishing you happy measuring and successful marketing.